How important is clarity, do you suppose? Is clarity mandated in the Bible? All right, so clarity, that's starting out here with like just picking a word and like not defining it all. So I need to define that a little bit. So clarity around both your purpose, but also I would say more your day-to-day life, maybe, as far as like um, what your purpose lived out should look like. So is it massively important to have real clarity around that, or is it not? And I think I'm going to say yes, but with some caveats. So um, the reason I say yes is that I think it's very hard to know that you're making good progress towards a goal if you don't know what that goal is. So in that sense, I do believe it's important to have clarity. Um, and it's something that I guess, actually pursuing right now is more clarity. But where I would give the caveat is that I think the most important thing is to have clarity around who God is. When you have clarity around who God is, it sort of supersedes, I think, the need for clarity in other areas to some extent. And um, so, for instance, let's say you're going to go on a long journey, and you had extreme clarity about the vehicle that you were going to take on your journey, but you had no clarity around the landscape you were traveling over, and you had no landscape about the end goal, and you had no clarity around the person you were traveling with. Okay, so you can see that having clarity on one thing is not always enough, right? And that's basically the parallel here is between the things that aren't God, right? So I could have extreme clarity on, let's say, what I want to do with my career, for instance, and it still wouldn't necessarily give me clarity on my purpose or give me clarity on how God feels about me or that kind of thing, or clarity on who God is, most importantly. So I do think clarity is important. I think it's good. I think it's good to pursue it. I think it can also be kind of when it's not when you don't pursue God Himself, when clarity becomes kind of a thing unto its own. I think it's possible for it to become kind of a way to control almost. Like I think there's to some extent that ambiguity sometimes creates a need for faith that there isn't when things are super clear. And I wonder if God doesn't at times allow things to be a little fuzzy because more faith is required in that space. So I don't have a ton of scriptural examples to back all of these thoughts up. This is kind of off the cuff here. Um, it was kind of odd how that in the New Testament, Jesus would often say things in parables and in ways that people didn't necessarily grasp exactly what he was saying at the time. And it doesn't really make sense to our Western minds that Jesus wouldn't just come out and say whatever he wanted to say, right? In our Western culture, it's the responsibility of the communicator to make himself or herself very clear. Um, I think some other cultures may say that it's the responsibility of the receiver of information to understand what's being said. Um, so I don't know if clarity on some of the peripherals is really the highest priority that God has. Um, but I think we can say that clarity on who He is a high priority. And one of the reasons we can say that is because um, He sent Jesus to the earth, and Jesus essentially said, "Look, I'm exactly the same as God. Like I'm exactly the same as my Father." He was God, but basically, I'm the exact representation of who God is. If you've seen me, you've seen God. It's the same difference essentially. And so, in that regard, I think we could say it's very important to God that we're clear on who He is, and it's so important that He sent His Son into the world, and not just that He came, and not just that He died, but also that He was the exact representation.